Hi, this is Mike Fink, founder of Go Missions to Mexico. Welcome to our Culture and Ministry Orientation Meeting, Session 1.
To have you guys here this morning. I want to welcome you guys here. A number of years ago, there was a fascinating thing that took place in our world's history. We know that God has a master plan for this world, for the ages. And about 25 years ago, a fascinating thing took place on the world scene. It didn't quite rank up with Christ dying on the cross, but a very powerful thing that happened. And that is, we know that God has, in fact, the last command of Christ in Matthew 28 is to go into all the world and preach the gospel and make disciples. And he says, "Lo, I will be with you to the end of the age." So God has a heart for missions. And about 25 years ago, we switched from missionaries being long-term, where they went to Bambi for 25 years and spent their lives and lived with these people. So about 25 years passed. Beyond that, about probably 95% of all mission work was done via long-term missionaries that went and lived in the countries. From about 25 years to the present, and especially in the last 15 years, now about 95% of all mission work is done via short-term missionaries. People just like yourselves that go on a mission trip. And that is absolutely awesome. I believe it says in Joel that God says in the last days, he says, "I will pour out my spirit on all flesh." And I believe that right here, we are a living witness of God's sovereign plan to reach his world. And he is speaking every day. His message is going out. And so there's a mass flood of short-term missionaries that are going on mission trips. Now, I noticed on some of your t-shirts that you had on the back of them, the group from Indiana, you had a message about what a missionary is. So on a penny, we know exactly what a missionary is, don't we? Does anybody have a penny? If you don't, well, I just happen to bring one. All right, this is a penny here. And on the back, it tells us what a missionary is. And after you hear this, you'll never forget what a missionary is, right? And you'll even put it on a t-shirt, maybe. On this penny, it says exactly what a missionary is. It's not in God we trust, that's what a missionary does, but it is 1 cent. We'll just change the C to an S, and now we know what a missionary is. A missionary is 1 cent. 1 cent to their own culture, but also 1 cent to a different culture. The challenge is, in short-term mission, let me tell you this, is that most short-term missionaries don't receive a cultural orientation about how to serve in their culture. They believe that life in the world is the same as where they're at. For example, I had a talk with the wonderful Texan friend with the big cowboy hat. He's got his southern drawl. And I say, "Hey there, big Texan, tell me about your southern drawl. Don't you have an accent?" And the big, wonderful, nice Texan says to me, he says, "Me? I'm not the one with the accent. You are the one with the accent. I'm normal, you're different." And that's the way we look at life. We think the way we're raised is normal, and the way everyone else looks at life is abnormal or different. So wherever you're at, that is what normal is. So here we are in Mexico. South of the border all the way to virtually the southern tip of South America shares some similar characteristics in their culture. Why? Because they were inhabited and influenced a lot from two sources. One, from the massive native people that lived there, but then two, from the Spaniards who came over. So, this country is very different, Mexico is very different, and if we don't understand the people that we're serving, then we can actually have less impact in their lives and not really get as much done. All of the efforts that we go through are less utilized. And in essence, would you believe me that if I told you that I have pastor friends who have told me, "Miguel," my name in Spanish, Miguel, we will no longer receive short-term mission teams. I've heard that from my own pastor friends in this valley. Why? No fault of our short-term missionary people that come down. No fault of the short-term mission teams. It's just that they don't get any cultural sensitivity, so that when they go out, sometimes just by violating violating some simple dress code and things like that, they can actually harm. I've had pastors tell me a short-term mission team has tore down in 5 days what I spent 5 years building within my people. Now, why is it that short-term mission teams can do that? Well, I'll tell you one reason is because though you might not think that you are a super Christian, when you come on a mission trip like this, you are viewed a lot higher than what you really are. So right now, just forget that you maybe don't read your Bible as much as you should, that you maybe don't witness as much as you should, that you're not a mega super Christian. In their eyes, you are. And in reality, you are better than what you probably think you are. If you're on a mission trip, or you're thinking about going on a mission trip, that tells me some things about you. It tells me that you love God. It tells me that that what God says is very important. So the message that you are communicating is massive. Now, some of you might not speak Spanish, and you think, gee, what can I do on a mission trip? Gee whiz, I can't really communicate all this well. Well, let me tell you this. Right now, this week, each one of you might as well have on, beside them, 2 big speakers. Okay, so you're like a computer now with a speaker system on them, all right? So you got these 2 big speakers beside you, and you are actually broadcasting a very, very powerful message. You've heard it said that what you say, or pardon, what you do speaks so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. Another version is, your actions speak so loud, I can't hear what you're saying. So the life that you are living speaks so loud that oftentimes people can't hear what you're saying. That can be good or bad, okay? So because you come on a mission trip, in their eyes, you are saying some big, huge things. One, you're saying God is important. God is very, very important to me, and so important that I'm willing to go spend my time, spend my money, to go help out the needy. All right? And the fact that you spend a lot of time, a lot of efforts, a lot of money to get here and to go on a mission trip speaks volumes about you. So it tells these people that God and His Word is very, very important. You're living it. You're not back home standing up somewhere and saying, hey, you should go on a mission trip. This is important. You should do that. No, you're putting your feet to the ground, and you're actually going and you're doing it. So that speaks mega volumes. You're also communicating that missions is important. I can go back home, I can show up at your church, I can, as a wonderful missionary, I can say, hey, missions is really important, we're doing this, you got to go on a mission trip. And you say, yeah, that's great, we should do that. And I get my applause, and we all leave church, and we're all happy, we live happily ever after, right? But it's easy to say it, it's another thing to do it. So when you go on a mission trip, you're telling these people here, and you're telling your people back home that missions is important. And if it was as important to God, to Christ, to be almost His last words and His almost last commandment, then it's extremely important. Another thing that you're preaching is that God's Word is important. God's Word is important. I'm so committed that I'm going to go and share God's Word. So it tells a lot about you, the fact that you are on a mission trip. So, but unfortunately, as I mentioned, a lot of short-term missionaries, they don't receive any orientation, any cultural orientation. They think the way I see life in the United States or Canada or wherever is normal, and these people are a little bit different. Now, why is this culture so different? We share our borders. The U.S. shares its borders with Mexico to the south and Canada to the north. The U.S. and Canada are pretty similar. Why is Mexico so different? I mean, it's just south of our border, and it shouldn't be that much different, but it seems to be quite a bit different. And as one who's lived in the culture now for about 14 years, it is very, very important. And it never ceases to amaze me. I think I know it all. I know very little, but it seems like I'm continually getting ahas. Oh, I see. Now I understand. It takes time to understand things about this culture. I just understood a couple days ago why in this culture it's more difficult to start churches in people's homes. That sounds like a great model, but in this culture it's a little bit more difficult to do that. Why? Because the communities are small, everyone knows each other, and oftentimes when the church starts in a person's home, if they don't have a great testimony, everybody says, I'm not going because that person doesn't have a great testimony. Or because the homes are small, so it's actually better to start a church in a neutral location, small building, whatever. That way there's no barriers. So the model I had always been taught, in a home, as being the best, got challenged a few days ago when it was another aha moment. So why is Mexico so different? Well, this is in a nutshell why. When the U.S. was inhabited, in the 1500s, we had the Englishmen who came from England, because in that particular time there was a mass conquest that discovered the new world, right? And so England, Portugal, Spain, France, all these countries were in a race to discover the new world and to inhabit it, to grow their kingdoms, and to get stuff. The Englishmen came over from England and came to the East Coast and started on the East Coast and eventually wound up on the West Coast. And what did we do with our indigenous population? Indigenous means what? The native Indians, the native people that were living in the country. We put them in reservations. And we came over in mass droves and inhabited the U.S. We mainly came from the country of England, and that's why English is our language, whatever. And we came over and massively inhabited the U.S. So that today, if you were to take all the blood in America, mix it all up in a blender, you would find there's probably less than 5% of the actual blood is Native Americans, Native Indian, indigenous blood. Okay, because we came over in mass droves. How about Mexico? Just the opposite. We had a few Spaniards that came over. Also in Mexico, we had a larger population of indigenous people than there were in the U.S. Farther south, survival is easier. Just give me a banana tree and a big leaf, and I'm happy. Okay, I can build my little shack out of bamboo, and I can survive because the climate's not as harsh. So a lot denser indigenous population base. So the Spaniard came over in small groves, came to get stuff, and basically, if you were to put Mexico's, all of its people, all of its blood in a blender, blend it up, you would find that Mexico probably retains around 80 to 90% of its original indigenous blood. So you didn't have quite the influence. So really, we're worlds apart. We're worlds apart in our thinking. So that's why it's important to understand some of these things. If we don't, then we can actually not have near the impact that we should. So, did you know that in Mexico, to this day, at this moment, there are still over 300 indigenous languages still spoken? Did you know that in this valley, the San Joaquin Valley, we're about 4 hours south of San Diego, there's over 80 indigenous languages spoken in this valley. I will go out on occasion and I run into people that I can't communicate with, though I consider myself fluent in Spanish. I remember in my first years I was working on Spanish really hard, and I was talking with this one, the elderly gal, and we weren't getting across to each other. And finally I asked her, ¿Habla español? Do you speak Spanish? She said, poquito. She spoke Mixteco, a different indigenous language. So we have this language for many. Spanish is their second language here in this valley. So it's important for us to understand the culture. Now I want to read to you a passage from Scripture that also talks about the importance of understanding the culture that we're serving in. Now who would you say was our first significant missionary in the early church? The Apostle Paul. Excellent. The Apostle Paul went into many different cultures. We know on the day of Pentecost there were probably 15 to 18 different cultures just in Jerusalem at that time. But there were many different cultures that the Apostle Paul went into. I want to read to you, this is in 1 Corinthians 9:18. I want to read to you Paul's message to us today about the importance of understanding the people that we're serving. You ready? Here we go. This is actually 1 Corinthians 9, verse 19. It says, "Though I am free and belong to no man, I make myself a slave to everyone." Why? To win as many as possible. He says, I'm free, going into a culture. I can do what I want to do, but I make myself a slave to that culture, to understand that culture. Why? To win as many as possible. The first principle in missions is that you become a servant to the people you're serving. So as we say today, it's not about me, it's not about us, it's about them. So we sacrifice to understand them so that we can better serve them. He says, I make myself a slave so that I can win as many as possible. He says to the Jews, I became like a Jew. Why? To win the Jews. Those not having the law or the Old Testament, I became like one under the law. Though I myself am not under the law. To why? To win as many as possible. To those not having the law, I became like one not having the law. Though I'm not free from God's law. He says, why? To win as many as possible. To win those not having the law. Verse 22, to the weak I became weak. Why? To win the weak. He says, I have become all things to all men, so that by all possible means I might save some. I do all this for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in its blessings. So the principle of adapting yourself to another culture to win as many as possible. And then he goes into a famous section of Scripture that probably we haven't tied together with the importance of understanding the culture we're serving in. He says, to those who run in the race, all run, but one receives the prize. Run in such a way that you might win. Therefore, the Apostle Paul says, I don't beat as one, beating the air. Box as one, just slightly. He says, I make my body my slave so that I might win as many as possible. So, the concept of understanding the culture we're serving in is very, very important. So, with that in mind, we're going to talk about some of the differences. Are you ready? Now, you guys are very smart, very brilliant people. These are not hard concepts to understand. But once again, if we don't understand some of these simple things, then we can have some challenges in this country. Okay? The first big cultural difference is that the U.S., North America, is more of a doing culture, and Mexico is more of a being culture. In a doing culture measures spirituality and measures their worth by what they do. What do you do for a living? If I meet you within the first 5 minutes, I want to know what you do for a living. Because that tells me your value, how important a person you are. So it's about doing. In church, I'm not so concerned that you maybe don't have the right attitude. What I'm most concerned with is, are you doing something? Are you actively serving? And in the U.S., Canada, that's how we measure our spirituality. In Mexico, we measure spirituality more by being. It's more about our right attitudes. It's more about understanding how to socially connect with one another, etiquette, things of that nature. So in Mexico, if I'm not busy, but I have a good attitude, then I've passed. I'm good. So we have two different versions of how to measure worth and how to measure even our worth spiritually. So that's why it's important in this culture to have a good attitude. Now this cultural and orientation meeting really was born out of my first mission trip. When I went on a mission trip, that was some 18 plus years ago. And I didn't receive any orientation. I showed up just thinking that, hey, I drove from that time Oregon, drove down, took a couple days to get here, got into the country. It looked a lot different. People spoke the language different. But hey, I'm just a humble first-time short-term missionary, and I'm just thinking that everything's the same down here. It is back home. So that's how I begin everything. And at that particular time, we were going to build some cabinets for a hospital. Now, doesn't that sound noble? A needy hospital needing some cabinets. And I'm going to help out with that. Boy, I just felt like I was king of the world. So I and my cabinet buddy, we get everything, our lumber list, we get everything measured out, our cuts, you know, everything we're going to do. And we've got 4 days to do this. We're going to build quite a few cabinets, to be honest with you. So we show up the first day, and man, we're just ready to go. And we show up at the shop at 7, no one's there. 8, no one's there. 9, no one's there. Noon, finally somebody shows up and says, hey, today's a Dia de Fiesta. Today's a holiday. So we're not going to have to work today. We're just going to have a good time. Isn't life great? We're going to have fun together today. And I'm thinking, no, life isn't great. I've got this project I got to do. I'm a doer, and I got to get this thing done, and now I've got one less day to do it. So the next day goes by, and no orientation, no guidance whatsoever. And now I've got these Mexicans, and they're kind of wanting to help, and they're kind of wanting to, hang around and stuff like that. And now, I hate to say all this stuff, but they were a pain to me because they were in my way. All right, they're just things in my way. I'm sorry I don't have time to talk with you. You already caused me one day. You lost 1 day of my time. You're making my life miserable. Why don't you go pick up this trash? All I see is trash laying everywhere. Go pick up your trash. That's what you can do, okay? Leave me alone. I need to get this project done of building cabinets for this hospital. All right? So guess what? We got the cabinets done, and at the end of the week, guess what all the Mexicans are saying about me? And I'm this youth pastor, and I'm a youth associate pastor. I've gone to the Bible college. I've gone to seminary, and I'm this youth pastor. I mean, I'm supposed to be mega spiritual. You know what they said about me at the end of the week? This guy needs to get saved. This guy needs Christ. He's got problems. He's got issues. So all because I didn't have an orientation meeting. So there's 2 different ways we measure things. So in Mexico, spirituality is mainly measured by our attitudes. That's why this week you need to have a great attitude. All right? And if something gets in the way, problem comes up, no problem. Life's great. We just got a great attitude, okay? And you will, at the end of the week, more will be accomplished, in that spiritually, in that category, more than what you do. Now, what we do is important. And in fact, in Scripture, we see both models. We see in James, the theme of the book of James is, faith without works is what? Dead. So you can tell me all about your faith, but if you're not doing anything, it's dead. Okay? But then we see in 1 Corinthians 13, where it says that if I can have the faith to move all mountains, and I can, heal the sick, I get my body to be burned and all this, but I don't have an attitude, I don't have love, I am nothing. So we see both in Scripture. But this culture is inclined more towards our attitudes, okay, more than our doing. Okay, so that's the first big difference. The next big difference is that the U.S., the North American family, is more of a time-oriented culture. Mexico is more of an event-oriented culture. What's the difference? A time-oriented culture focuses more on time. They tend to be punctual, efficient, they're quick, things start on time and end on time. Church and most activities last a certain amount of time, and you can't add something to the schedule without taking something out. Time frames and punctuality are important. Everything is orderly, neat, and in its place. So we're in a time-oriented culture. Now, hear me this morning. The things that I'm talking about are generalities. Now, you might find yourself, maybe inclined a little bit more whatever. But these are the cultures that we live in. This is the tendencies of the U.S. and Canada, and the tendencies of Mexico are these others. So these are kind of generalities. So a time-oriented culture is time. We grow up in time. We learn from an early time. By the time we're done with our first grade school, time is our master. We march to time, we learn, we've gone to school, everything starts on time, classes are a certain amount of time. So time is our master, and we're happy. That's great. We live in time, no problem. But Mexico is more of an event-oriented culture. Event-oriented culture focuses more on the moment at hand and less on the future. They think differently about time and put it way down the scale of importance. Everything will work itself out, and there's no need to get undone if the schedule is not kept. They normally start late. Things last longer. There's no definite time frame to be kept. It's about the event. It's like a baseball game. You have to have 9 innings or it didn't have a game. All right? That's more about Mexico. We need to have our events. We have to have all of the pieces of the puzzle. For example, church. In America, church is going to last roughly, I've got this pinpoint down, tell me if I'm wrong, most churches today are lasting about 1 hour and 15 minutes. All right? An hour is just a little bit too short, unless you're an older style church, bless your heart, with all due respect. The older model churches are usually around an hour. The new model churches, contemporary churches, are going to be anywhere from an hour and 15 minutes to about an hour and a half. For most, about an hour and 15 minutes. So, we've got a certain amount of time, and if we're going to have something special in the church service, like let's say a wonderful missionary shows up, then we've got to cut some other things out. Okay, we just can't add things in, and if we do, we've got to take something out. Right? That is a time-oriented culture. We have a box a certain amount of time. In an event-oriented culture, we can't take anything out. Otherwise, we haven't had the event. We can't shorten something. We can shorten a little bit, we can modify, and we can't just remove things like we can in the States. So that's a big difference. So in order for Americans to have impact in this culture, they need to adopt a flexible mindset. We have a schedule. We're going to try to follow that schedule. We've worked hard to get everything all lined up. But understand that if our schedule doesn't go just bangity, bangity, clickety, clickety, clack, and don't get all undone, because it's all going to happen, just maybe not at the exact moment. So the Mexican, bless their hearts, they're not all undone about this technicalities. We'll start it, it'll happen, and when it all gets done, we're all going to be happy. Okay? And we're not going to be so concerned about how great everything is. In our American culture, bless our hearts, each culture has its strengths and weaknesses. In our American culture, we do things the best we can, pretty polished and all that. This culture is not about all the time performance. Okay? We might get up in front of church. I've been to church services where there's an elderly gal who gets up, bless her heart. She cannot sing, and she has these words, and she's just kind of making a joyful noise. And all the people are just, isn't this great? This person's up there expressing themselves. Back home in the church I'm from, it's like, get the gal off the stage. Stop, get her off, we got a problem, Houston. All right, but it's very different down here. So anyway, great attitude, and we have to be flexible. Okay, so just be flexible. During the week, if something doesn't go as you thought, no problem. Just put on your joyful smile and just go to what we call standby mode. Okay, joyful standby mode. Talk to somebody or whatever. But don't get undone that we're not getting something done at this moment. So the next big difference is that America is more of a task-oriented culture, and Mexico is more of a tranquility-oriented culture. What's the difference? A task-oriented culture is about production. Produce, produce, produce. The assembly line. Bang, bang, bang. We get things done. There's only one country in the world that produces a car faster than we can. It's Japan. They also have the highest suicide rate, but maybe that's not because of their uptightness, or maybe it might be a spiritual problem. But a task-oriented culture focuses on getting things done. We figure out the fastest, easiest way to get something done, and that's great. That's awesome. Most of all of the discoveries have come from the U.S. We figure things out. We've got the latest, Intel Core chip on our laptop. We figure out how to upload videos fast. I mean, everything is fast. We get things done. We're always looking, how can we do this faster and quicker? How can we produce more? That's great. That's super. But this culture, that's not where they're at. They're not into production. They're not into all this. They are into tranquility. Give me a tranquil life, a peaceful, steady Eddie life, and that's what I want, and I'll be happy with that. Okay? So, see a conflict? We have a task-oriented culture coming into a tranquility-oriented culture, and the sparks start flying, and we start thinking, maybe less of them, and why don't they do all this? And it's good to teach and help and things of that nature, but just understand they're not into wanting to build a house in 4 days. They're into showing up, talking, slowly kind of working, and at the end of the day, we'll go home and with our wonderful family, and life goes on. This is the way it's always been. This is the way we want it, so don't rock the boat. So you can see that there can be a problem there. So this week, we're going to work hard, but don't get undone, and always, bless your hearts. It's great to try to figure out how to do things faster, but just be careful that we're not, maybe looking down on them, or, it's our obligation to show them the latest trick, because they're not necessarily concerned about the latest trick. Okay, they're not into that. Some are, but most aren't. So just be sensitive to those kinds of things there. So, in order for Americans to minister and have impact, they need to adopt kind of a little more relaxed spirit, okay? A tranquility-oriented culture focuses on being laid back, having no strife and problems. They would rather spend more time visiting or a tranquil lifestyle than getting something done. They don't worry so much about tomorrow, and just focus more on the now. As long as they have a lot of friends and have a peaceful life, consider themselves rich. We in America are used to this. In America, our deep-seated, ingrained, subconscious desire is we work really hard for a moment in time in the future that we can enjoy. Right? I work really hard, I kill myself, then I get my 2-week vacation. It's great. I work hard all of my life so that I can finally retire. So it's this, hurry, hurry, go, 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 and then I can let down and I can retire. So we're kind of looking for happiness out there in a moment in time. Mexico is more about all of it being enjoyed, so to speak. So I'm not going to kill myself for 6 months and then enjoy myself for 2 weeks. I'm just going to lay back and enjoy myself the whole time. All right? Sometimes I have to say this humbly, after living here a while, sometimes I really admire my friends here, because they beat me, they've got me beat in every aspect. I'm all, getting hurried around, getting stuff done, all driven, all frantic and all this. They're just happy-go-lucky. I've got gray hairs and they're doing great, and isn't life great? And sometimes I came to this conclusion sometime back. I think realistically, if there was a test given on how to live, I think maybe they know how to live better than I do. I can get a lot more done than them. I can outproduce them. I can build a kingdom. But they know how to live better than I do, I think, sometimes. So, just understand that these differences, and in order to minister in this culture, once again, we're going to work hard and get stuff done, but we need to adopt a little bit different mindset. So, in all of these things, I want to say this, okay, because oftentimes short-term mission teams now allow the pendulum to swing the other way. Okay, they come down, man, we're going to do, we're going to kill that baby and bag it and watch when we get it back home, we're going to show our production, and we've got a lot done, okay, we've produced. That's great. That's good. I take my hat off to you. However, just understand that we want to work hard, we want to do all this, but we want to have, at the same time, great attitudes and flexibility. So it's not one or the other, it's both. And don't let the pendulum swing now, so that now it's just like, oh, okay, we're just going to just hang out for the week. We might show up at 9, 10, 11, or 12. We might do this, we might do that. No, that's not what we're saying. Don't let the pendulum now swing the other way. We're going to be punctual. We're going to work hard. We're going to serve. We're going to have some of these other attitudes and mindsets as we go through it. And if we have to wait, because we're the slave, as Apostle Paul said, I made myself a slave, so we're the slaves. So if someone's going to wait, who waits? The king or the slave? The king doesn't wait, the slave waits. So they're our kings for the week. We're here to serve them. So if we have to wait, we'll wait, but we're going to be there, and so that they don't have to wait. Okay? So, the next big difference is dependency versus independency. We in America are independent. Go west, young man. We're independent. I've got everything I need. I've got my own home. I've got my own 2, 3, 4 cars. I've got my own bedroom. I've got my own bathroom with my own sink. I've got my own stuff. I've got my own hammer. I've got my own tools. I've got my own skis. I've got everything I need. I've got my own laptop, everything. All right? And if you don't have something, everybody else maybe has them, but don't ask to borrow my stuff. Because it's my stuff, and you might break my stuff. You're not going to give me my stuff back when I want it. So I have everything I need, so I don't need you. Hey, it's great, you know, I want your friendship, I want to hang out, but I don't need your stuff, and I don't need you. I'm good on my own. Thank you. Great. We all have our space because we're all independent. Mexico is a dependent culture because they don't have everything. They don't have their own home. Oftentimes, families live in units. It's kind of like the kingdom concept. In my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to prepare a place for you. We also saw this in Israel, didn't we, Steve, when we were there? You see this mindset where when a person gets married, oftentimes rather than leaving, you know, moving away, we should leave father and mother spiritually, but and emotionally and stuff. You know, for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife. So anyway, they just add a room on, or add a room on the property. So it's like the kids aren't moving to Timbuktu to get as far away from mom and dad as possible, and as far away from their hometown as possible, Podunk town. No, we just add a room on, a house close by, a shack, and we live together. So we're kind of more of a family oriented. So we don't have our own homes. We don't have our own cars. We don't have our own hammer. We don't have all of our own stuff. So I need you. I need your stuff. And the more friends I have, the richer I am, because now I have access to more things. And together, arm in arm, shoulder to shoulder, we get through life. Because I don't have everything. So Mexico is a dependent culture. Also, there's many other differences, and we won't go into all of them. But one of the big differences is dress. And dress is where many short-term mission teams fall into problems, more than any other area. So listen to this carefully, and then we'll conclude session 1, and in session 2 we'll talk about some other things, important things. And we'll talk about dress at this time. Dress, think about it. Dress is a form of communication. I communicate through what I wear. I'm communicating. I communicate what people group, what kind of social group people I hang out with. I promote values. I promote different concepts, different things through what I wear. And Mexico, at this point, is far, far more conservative than America is. America, bless our hearts, as you well know, if you go back to the 50s, all the ladies wore what? They all wore dresses. Go back and watch the 50s movies. I love watching the 50s movies because, man, the gals are, and everybody's very slender back then, too. So anyway, all the gals are very attractive, and they've got their dresses, and they go out, you know, and they have the little belts here, and they're just all very pretty, and their hair's all done, you know, real nice. Our hair's done great today. I'm not knocking anybody's day. But anyway, they all wear the dresses and everything. Gotta be careful what I say, right? I get myself in deep trouble real quick. You ladies look so wonderful this morning. Never seen ladies with better hair. You spend all morning working on your hair. Gee whiz. And you're so attractive. Anyway, we all wore dresses, and then we got into more revolutions. So anyway, to make a long story short, America today dresses very differently than how it dressed in the 50s. And also, we've adopted now a myriad forms of expression. In the 50s, about everybody was pretty well the same. We didn't have all these expressions. When I was in high school, way back in the 70s, gee whiz, that was a long time ago. It doesn't seem like that long to me, but anyway, you know, we had different groups, but we had like maybe 3 or 4. Now if you go to a high school campus, how many are there? I mean, you've got, I can't even name them all, but you've probably got, what, 8 to 10, if not more, different social. In Mexico, we're not quite there yet. Okay, so all these forms of expression are very, very different. So Mexico dresses much more conservative. Also, the way the church dresses in Mexico is far more conservative than the way the church dresses in the U.S. Big difference. That's why this week we need to ask you to make some sacrifices regarding your dress. It's nothing about judgment. I'm not here to judge you, but just here to humbly ask you to make these sacrifices so we can have the most highest impact as possible. A number of years ago, I was right next door in a community over here, and I was by myself, and I noticed there was a short-term mission team there. It wasn't from our ministry. And so I'm kind of looking around, and I noticed some things right off the bat that caught my eye. I noticed that they were working on a church. That's very noble. But I noticed when I got there, well, one thing that attracted me was the sound. They had their van doors open, playing American music. It's great American music, but just mega blast. All right? I mean, we can take or leave that. That's not, the cardinal sin. But then I noticed their young ladies were in very, very short shorts, and some, I wouldn't call them bikinis, but what do you call them, sports brasiers and stuff like that, and pretty, pretty exposed. And I'm thinking, whoa, this is interesting. And I noticed the guys in their dress, they had like some gang-related paraphernalia, some earrings, and just a pretty extreme dress. And so I go up to the pastor guy there in charge, and speak Spanish, been living here and everything, so I tell him I'm a missionary here. I say, how are things going? He says, terrible, terrible, terrible. But one thing about the Mexican, they're never going to tell you what's wrong. They are non-confronted. In America, we got a problem, we sit down, we address it. We're used to a certain amount of abrasiveness in our relationships. Not them. You don't. I could talk to you and say it wouldn't hurt your feelings, but it would hurt their feelings. They are very, very sensitive, more sensitive in the area of these kinds of things. They're a non-confronted culture. So anyway, he tells me all about these things. And was it the short-term missionary's fault? No. It was the missionary or whatever organization that they were working through just did not give them any orientation. Maybe didn't understand the importance of the orientation. So that's why we need to ask some differences, ask some favors of you regarding the differences in the way that you dress. So a lot more modest in this culture. So ladies, we'll begin with you. Our lovely ladies. So attractive. And you know something? The longer I live, the more fascinated I am with God and His creation. We know that God created male and female, and we see in the feminine gender, my humble opinions, we see more of the beauty of God. In the masculine gender, we see more of the strength of God. Okay, so we need to address and deal with the beauty. So gals, we have to ask for favors of you because you're just a lot more attractive than us good old boys. All right? For some reason, people just don't think that, they're not that excited about looking at a guy. For some reason, gals just attract a lot more attention. So gals, this week, if it involves ministry, now we've made one change this year because times are changing. You no longer have to wear a skirt for your BBSs. Okay, you can wear pants, you can wear capris, okay? Yeah, but you don't have to wear a skirt. Okay? Now, would you believe me if I told you a lot of indigenous gals wear dresses to their work, but they are practical. You know the problem with the dress? You know why in the old days they wore them long? You ever think about skirts in the wind? That's why they wore them long. Okay? So the indigenous gals, they've gotten smarter, and dresses are, you're bending over picking strawberries, it's kind of a challenge. So they wear a short kind of a dress, and then they wear pants or something like that. They still got to dress, and they got to be correct, but then they just wear pants underneath. So, if you want to wear your dresses over your pants, you can. So, you don't have to wear dresses for BDS, pants, whatever, but for church and for church, we need you to wear your dresses. Also for your visitation, if you would wear your dresses. Now, in visitation, sometimes the gals that go, the visitation is not quite as important, but once again, I want to communicate this very, very important. This week, you guys are a certain kind of Christian. You are what we call a Mary Poppins Christian. What Mary Poppins Christian is? Practically perfect. Okay? Now, once again, they view you a lot higher than what you are. So you are the examples this week. You are mega Christians who have left your country, spent money to come down and serve them for the week. And to them, that is really, really incredible. Got a question for you. You guys come from great churches, right? Sure. When's the last time some big mega church called you up and say, hey, we want to come serve with you for a week? No strings attached. We'll even pay. We'll pay for all the ministries we'll do. We'll pay for building buildings that you guys need. We'll do this stuff. Willow Creek called you lately? Saddleback called you lately? Any of these big, wonderful churches call you and say, hey, we want to come help you for a week? No. To them, it's really important. So you're Mary Poppins Christians, so that's why our example. So the philosophy of our ministry is we're going to be, have the most impact as we can. We want to take away anything that could rob that impact. Okay, so your dress, we're going to be the example. It might be that we could get away on some occasions with not having a dress or whatever, but we don't want to have anybody at the end of the week say, hey, I wonder about that group. Okay, we want to be examples to them in this culture at this point. Yes, times are changing, but trust me, right now the standard still is, in this area, that for church, gals should wear their dresses. Okay? Visitation is not quite so important, but some do, so we want to not have any problems there, so we're going to ask you for dresses for that. Okay? Any other work projects, BBS, dentistry, whatever, any medical, you guys can go ahead and use for ladies who wear pants. Okay? Gals also for your tops, no sleeveless tops, and no tops that are short. Where if you're painting this week or something and you lift your arms up, that your lovely, attractive tummy would be showing. Okay, so we can't see your lovely tummy this week. All right? So gals, once again, modesty. No extreme dressing. Okay? Also, you don't have to wear a lot of earrings and stuff like that if you don't want. If you're so attractive, you don't need that stuff. But if you want to be even more attractive. Anyway, you don't have to wear all your jewelry. Okay? So that's the thing for gals. For guys, you can wear your pants, but no shorts. Okay? Pants, you can wear your pants, everything obviously. No shorts. Guys, no tank tops, things of that nature. Also, guys, no gang-related type of dress. For everyone, no extreme dress. Okay? No real baggy pants, no pants with no holes in them, no, like guys, especially bandanas, anything that might be kind of gang-related associated with. Also, guys, no earrings, things of that nature. For everyone, body piercings, if you can lose any body piercings, or if you have a tattoo, you can cover that up. Okay? Just once again, this culture is in a different space or a different place than where America is at. Once again, not to judge, just some things about this culture that we want to take into consideration. So, also when you're out and about, like in ministry and things of that nature, the area is sunny, obviously, so if you need your sunglasses, take your sunglasses. But whenever you're talking to somebody, take your sunglasses off. People down here don't really wear sunglasses. A few do, but hardly anybody wears them. And also, when you're talking with somebody, it's kind of like you have your sunglasses on. It's kind of like Darth Vader. You know, who is that person in there? As the saying goes, the eyes are the window to your soul. So just make certain when you're in the home visitation, things of that nature, you don't have your sunglasses on. When you're in personal contact with somebody. Also, if you go to someone's home, take your hat off and things of that nature. Also, ladies and sandals, just take into consideration that sandals are somewhat risky, especially on your work projects. I wouldn't recommend sandals because you might drop a block on your toe, your black toe. Also understand that when you're out and about in the community, your prayer, visitation ministry, going to people's homes and things of that nature. And in America, we're used to looking, well, we don't have to look down when we walk. We have wonderful sidewalks, paved streets, and we don't have to worry about looking down. But down here, church is a church/construction zone sometimes, as you guys well know. The streets might have sewer, they might have rebar sticking out, they might have wire, who knows what might be out there. And the people down here are used to looking down when they walk, so they're fine with it, but just understand that be careful if you go out and about with sandals, things of that nature, you don't have a problem. So, well great, well that includes session 1 here of our cultural and ministry orientation. And the next session is going to be exciting. We're going to talk a little bit more about the differences in wealth versus poverty. So it's a really fascinating section. You guys are going to learn some mega things about yourselves. Our saying is, give us a week of your life, we'll make you a millionaire. So we're going to talk about, we're going to make you millionaires in the next segment. We're going to get rich real fast. We're going to talk a little bit about the differences and things of that nature. And we're going to talk about some of the actual practical ministry orientation part. The VBS, the prayer visitation, the community outreaches, and things of that nature. So the next segment is going to be really exciting. So great. Well, thank you for your attention, and we'll take a break and be back in a few moments.